Good morning. This is Norma Cowie with a Sunday thought. As it's the beginning month, this is our second Sunday, and I find that very often we need to revisit basics. When it comes to our life, how do we look at our basics of how we live our lives and what we're creating and how we're dealing with whatever our life presents us? And so, what many people do understand is I began my metaphysical spiritual journey at the tender age of 20, learning how to read tarot in a whole new different way at the time. And over the years, I began to realize that the psychological way in which I had of looking at the symbology was really, really important. And that the suits of the tarot really showed the basics of how we live our lives. First of all, you don't hear a lot today about the subconscious, but I learned in the 70s and 80s, and it was all about the subconscious. What is in the subconscious? How does the subconscious work? And today I wanted to talk about the very basic thing I think that is important, and that is our thoughts, how we think. I often tell my clients, our thoughts are like the framework of a house. That is the framework, how we think. But how do we discover what we really think? Well, how do we discover what is that thoughts that are going out that is creating our vibrational rate? Because basically the thoughts that go out come back in the reality of our world. And it's like, how do we assess that? And the other thing, before I go a little further than that, I want to say that very often I also explain that the subconscious is very much like a garden. When you have a garden, you weed it. You look at everything, you take all the weeds away. But, in a short while later, they start coming back again. And yet you pulled the weed, you pulled all the roots, everything. Where do these things come from? And our subconscious is a lot like that in some ways, is that these weeds, as I call them, the thoughts that we really don't want to support or have, that we need to tend that. We need to make sure that we clear all those weeds away, and then we revisit, we become aware. Now, how I do that is by having an observer who watches at times. I sit back and watch my thinking as it goes across my conscious mind. Find out where the weeds are coming back in again, or if there are any weeds, or if the thought is not really depicting the goals that I'm wanting. And then I can restructure them with a very simple technique that I call freeze, evaporate, and replace. In other words, when I have a thought I don't particularly want, I freeze it in space and time, I evaporate it, clear, and then I replace it, because with energy, you need to always replace. You just don't take energy out and leave it, because the body will, and the subconscious, because that's what I'm talking about, will replace what was already there if you do not replace it with a new energy or thought. And we're dealing with thoughts, so we will stay with that. So we have a thought, we have a goal, we have a career. Last week we talked a little bit about goals. And so what we want, how do we ensure that our thinking, and therefore the whole sense of who we are, is all behind that? And that is by observing how our thought is. What is our pattern? Because we don't always get instant results. And that's where I think something that is our instant world that we live in thinks that if we think it now, we should have it right away. It doesn't always work like that. I often used to say the big computer in the sky has to rearrange things to bring to you what it is that you want. And sometimes that takes a little time to do that. So what is the framework? What is the thinking pattern that you have that is consistent? If you have any self-doubt, if you have any concern or any worry, it's going to reappear in your thinking process. It'll therefore reappear in the world when you run into certain circumstances you're not real comfortable. And I still have some of those to this day. I'm not a very big confrontationalist. And yet there are times when you have to stand up for your beliefs and your attitudes, your awarenesses. So that can be a little bit confrontational. And yet my whole life is kind of, I don't really want to have to deal with that. But I've had to fight my way. I've had to stand up. I've had to move forward. I've had to pull out a lot of, excuse me, a lot of weeds out of my subconscious mind. We all have a childhood, and some childhoods are not the best. Mine, in some ways, was very good, but there are also some parts in there that weren't. I left my home and country when I was 18 years of age. And although I had been working full time for 3 years before that, because we grew up in an environment where when my dad said to me, you're 15 now, you can go to work, so go to work, kind of thing. I did all my education here in Canada later as an adult. And so I worked and went to school and had kids. And it was a busy, busy time. But at the same time, I was also growing in understanding the principle because I wanted to understand life. I wanted to understand how we created the lives. I wanted to understand what it was all about. And I'd always had this not fantasy, sort of, I wanted to know what God was. That was from when I was quite young, actually, because I did go spend some time at Sunday school. Well, what is this God they talk about, that you can't see? And is it real? I used to think, is it real? Is it real? So what is the thinking pattern? That thought that I had when I was, especially from 7 on, I really can see how it was the motivator of my life in many, many ways, and has brought me great delight and great rewards. Because I wanted to understand. It wasn't a matter of just accepting what anybody said. I wanted to understand it for myself. And one of the things that I came to understand, thanks to the tarot and the wand symbology, was how to think, how your thinking works. And if once you understand how the thinking process works, when you fall into confusion, when you fall into defensiveness, when you fall into not being sure of things, then you get to understand how to get out of it. That's what I love about the way I look at the tarot, and how I was taught to look at it, actually, is that it shows you the way out. It's never, ever dead end unless you want it to be. It's never, ever a blockage or a stoppage. It is a sense of, oh, okay, that's what I'm believing. And that's when I began to create okay, that's the thought that's in the way. How do I change that? And that's when I realized, like we used to pull weeds, but weeds work. But we can freeze, evaporate, and replace them. That's just one way. I have several others, but that's my main little one of doing when I'm observing my thinking pattern has slipped, because we're human. And because we're human, we endeavor sometimes not always to be as exact as we would like to be. Today, some of you know, I've got 3 books out on the tarot, plus others that are available through my website. But I also have now a set of videos that also teach you how to read for yourself. So you get to understand who you are. How do you understand who you are? You can look at your life, it takes a long time, but by daily looking, you can see a reflection of how those thoughts are. Are you confused? Are you projecting? Are you closed up? Where are you? Actually, the process of creating fire thinking is very simple. You have the thought, you contemplate the thought, you project the thought, and then you celebrate the arrival of the thought in reality. That's a simple process, but that's not how we live our lives. It's nice when we do. So you're building every day, thinking, because thoughts happen all the time. You're building the framework of your life. And I really want you to be able to build the framework of your life. And just before I close, I want to say this coming Monday, which is tomorrow night at 7 o'clock BC time, Pacific time, I should say, is I am starting, I'm starting a new program. And it's called Mental Mind Treatments, because I did learn this method of prayer, but which I was trained as a spiritual mind treatment, but I'm calling it a mental mind treatment, because I want people to realize it's how we think that is important. And there are ways in which we can begin to shift the energies. So anyway, I'm going to be on live on YouTube. Chat line is going to be open. It'll be a new experiment. There's an experiment. But if you have a situation or a question, come on the chat line, and I will endeavor to give a solution to that and through a prayer form. Thank you for listening. Have a great day. I'm a little tired because I've been sitting up late watching our young Canadian boys win the ATP event in tennis in Sydney, Australia. But other than that, life is good. Snow on the ground, cold outside, warm inside. Bless you. Have a great day. See you Wednesday. Oh, no, I'm going to see you Monday night, and then I'll see you Wednesday. Bye.